Good day, gamers. Today, movement, advanced movement, and damage. Okay, so this is going to be a very code heavy lesson. So buckle up. If you lose sort of the thread of this, the code is available on Schoology. So, anyways, we're going to be opening up the enemy controller script. So right now we only have one public variable. By the end of this, we're going to have a bunch. Okay, so the first sort of things we're going to sort of work on is we're going to be adding a bunch of public variables, as I just alluded to. So right now we just have speed. Okay, we are going to add. I'm actually going to be adding one that's also not part of the of the text instructions. But if you add it, if you don't add it, that's okay too. Anyways, we're going to first of all going to create a public variable that's going to be accessible from like the Unity editor. And this is going to be so public, of course. And then we're going to say here bool. So that's going to be bool is short for boolean. It's either going to be true or false. And so this one is going to be called just vertical. Okay, so vertical. Now this is going to be used later on. Right now, our vending machine right now only moves to the right. We're going to be enhancing it, so it's going to do a patrol path. This patrol path is either going to be up and then down, or right and then left. Okay, so this boolean here is going to indicate, are we going to be traveling along the y-axis? Are we going to be traveling along the x-axis? Okay. The other thing we're going to be adding here is public float, and then we're going to here change time. And we're going to set this to 3.0f. Now, this is going to be basically how many seconds we're going to be traveling like in one direction. So in terms of like, are we going to be positive on the x-axis for 3 seconds and then turn around? This is basically how long we're going to proceed along our set patrol path. The other one I'm going to do here is I'm going to also set this public int, and we're going to say here damage amount. And I'm going to set this initially to just -1. All right. This is going to be sort of something that when we collide with the player, how much damage should we do? Okay, so that'll be sort of something that will be coming along. The other thing we're going to add here is going to be here is a timer. So float, and we're going to say here timer. Don't need any values there, and then int direction. We're going to set this to just +1 initially. Okay. So the other thing we're going to do is let's go here to start. All right, so we're going to go ahead, more about this later in a bit. We're going to start off and we're going to set our timer variable that we had set to a float. We're going to set our timer variable equal to our change time variable that we had set up here. Okay, so we basically set this initially. Timer is going to be given the value of 3 seconds, essentially. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our update function. So I'm going to go here. Before we had fixed update, that's going to be dealing with sort of speed. We're going to go ahead here and just go, and we're going to say void, and then we're going to just say capital U update. Okay. And then let's do here open parenthesis, close parenthesis, and then open squiggle brackets. And that should populate the other one. Okay. So void update. And then let's go ahead here. And this is going to basically incorporate time. So this is sort of something like, how do we get it so it's like 3 seconds? So once per frame, essentially, we're going to say timer minus equals time dot delta, lowercase, delta time. Okay, so this is basically going to decrement or decrease the value of this variable here. Okay, and why did I say timer dot delta time? That's time time.delta time. Sometimes VS Code doesn't really help me out. So anyways, now we're going to do an if statement. So basically, if the following statement is true. So we'll say here, if timer is less than 0, then do open bracket, open squiggly brackets. We're going to say here, direction is going to be equal to minus direction. Okay. And then timer is going to be reset to change time again. Okay. So this is essentially inverting the direction. So like if we initially had a positive direction, we'll get to the direction I think is set to, yeah, +1. Okay. So we'll be incorporating this, but essentially like we want to travel along the x-axis on a positively along the x-axis initially, and then once with that timer, which is going to be slowly decreasing, and every 3 seconds, this if statement's going to be triggered. We're going to basically invert that. So we're going to take a positive and make it a negative. Okay, so initially, we're going to be traveling along the x-axis to the right, then we're going to flip it, and then we're going to go along the x-axis to the left, or as we'll learn here, we're going to be going up, increasing our y, and then once this timer hits below 0, we're going to then invert it, and so we'll be going negative. And then conversely, we multiply a negative by a negative, and it's going to flip it. So we were traveling negatively, now we'll go positively. Okay. All right. So now let's go to fixed update. Okay, so now we're going to keep this. Most of this is like this first line here is fine. Okay, we're going to go ahead here, and this is going to be some ifs. We're going to be working with an if statement initially, determining. Remember, way back here, way back, we had this Boolean variable that's going to be set. It's a Boolean variable called vertical, and so this is going to govern like, do we want this character to go up or down? So, anyways, we're going to say here if vertical. All right, so vertical is either going to be true or false. Let's do some squiggly brackets for if vertical. Okay, and then I can actually just copy this line here as far as like the line we had done before about just traveling along the right axis, or the x-axis. We're going to change it, so I just pasted it, and instead of position x, we're going to change this to position y, and then the rest is the same. Okay. And then we're going to say here, so we said here, if this is vertical, we're going to travel along the y-axis. Then we're going to set this as an else. And then we're going to take that code we had done before as far as our like working along the x-axis. Let's grab that and then put it in that else statement. Okay, so the logic here, let me just zoom out a second, is we're to, like fix update is going to say, okay, so initially set the variable position equal to the current position. If the variable called vertical is true, we're going to move along the y-axis. If this is false, move along the x-axis. And then we're going to keep that same line there. Okay. Cool. A lot of code. I tell you, this is a code heavy lesson. All right, we have another bit of code. Now, this code should be very familiar. Okay. This is honestly, I could probably just grab my code from the damage zone. Or no, we don't want to do it. Wouldn't be damage zone. It would be the health collectible. Okay, because in this case here, this is going to be on trigger enter rather than on trigger stay, where we're like chilling. So, anyways, so void, and then we're going to set it to on trigger enter 2D, capital D, and then what we'll do is it's going to take the following argument, collider 2D, and then we're going to set that variable, the name of that parameter to other. Do, of course, a squiggly bracket. All right. And now let's do our code. Should be very familiar. So we're going to say here, let a variable be of the type player controller. We're going to declare it as player, and let this be equal to the thing that just collided into me. So we'll say here other dot game object dot get components, and then we go ahead here, it's going to look for a component called player controller, and then open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon. All right, so we have our logic then, because it's going to basically, this script will, or this sort of function will or method will run every time it bangs into something. It's going to look to see it, the thing I bang into or collide with. Does it have a component called player controller? So this is that logic that's going to check that. So if player is not equal to null, okay, then we're going to go ahead and this is now where my code is going to differ a little bit from like the text instructions. We'll say here that player script has a function called change health. And then in the like text instructions, we have -1 there, but here we're going to use here damage amount. Okay. And then there we go. So let's save that. So remember we have here the value. Yes, I did set it to -1. Okay. So let's see here, moment of truth. One thing I missed was I didn't incorporate our variable called direction. So we're going to go ahead here and we miss this in terms of our vertical position. We need to multiply our speed by our direction. So we got to go ahead here because we declared this variable called direction and then we never used it. Okay, so this is going to go ahead and set it so that it's going to be incorporating that. So this is either going to be a positive one or a negative one. So let's go ahead and check that out. So now we should be good to go. So let's look here a second. Make sure that we are good to go. Yep, and there we go. All right, gamers, good stuff. I wish you the best of luck. All right, all right.